Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist congregation of Terre, Haute. This congregation welcomes all people, regardless of their age, religion, race, nationality, ability, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, or anything else that has been used to divide people. We are a group of people with our own opinions, our own ideas, our own dreams, but we share ideals. We share a common belief in a liberal religion. In our discussions, we may disagree with each other, but we must always remember that what unites us is stronger than what separates us. We must always end the service aware of the love that we have for each other.
About one of the UU principles, and today we are talking about the second one. We promise to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Compassion is something we can easily act on individually. We can demonstrate openness, give people respect, treat people with kindness, all on our own. But we need one another to achieve equity and justice. Justice, equity, and compassion are all part of the same package. Just as the second principle overlaps with the first, so it is related to the seventh principle, the independent web of all existence. And that was written by Reverend Emily Gage, who at one time was with the Unity Temple in Chicago.
Just a few opening words. These are from Rabbi Joseph Telushin, who's one of the leading experts on Jewish humor in the world, who I've had the privilege not of meeting, but of communicating over the years through email. So this is sort of a brief introduction to what I'm going to talk about by the rabbi. For 2,000 years, the Jews have been sharpening their wit and wits on the groundstone of the Talmud. This may explain why so much Jewish humor has an intellectual character. Now take the humor of other peoples. Jewish humor shares many of the same significant characteristics. Jewish humor is tickled by comic situations, punning, and repartee. Humor thus becomes an end in itself. It arouses laughter and admiration for the person who is exhibiting it. But Jews, since the days of the Talmud, have been indestructible moralists and teachers. They have turned the joke, the quip, and the humorous characterization into pedagogic aids, a way of teaching, exposing human frailties, often their own, about this topsy-turvy, mashugana world we live in. I'll explain mashugana later, but I think you have an idea what it means. Why do Jews make so much about their own adversity? It is the instinct of self-preservation. By laughing at the absurdities and cruelties, they draw much of the sting away from themselves. It is the laughter through tears.
טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד. הנה מה טוב ומנעים, שבת אחים גם יחד.
We're now going to read our transitional words, which are in the back of the hymn book. It is number 658, and I will read the regular print, and then if you will read the italics. To risk. To laugh is to risk appearing the fool.
To weep is to risk appearing sentimental.
To reach out for another is to risk exposing our true self.
To place our ideas, our dreams, before the crowd is to risk loss.
To love is to risk not being loved in return.
To hope is to risk despair.
To try is to risk failure.
To live is to risk dying.
And that is anonymous. Well, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. I am absolutely so happy that we have our speaker here today, and I'm really so happy you all came to hear him. I am a faithful Dick Wolfsie reader every Wednesday, just like all of you.
So let me begin by introducing you to somebody. This was my rabbi, let's see, it would be about 60 years ago when I studied for bar mitzvah. He was my rabbi. He was also the man, by the way, who married my mother and father. So I was petrified of him, just petrified. And he used to come into the Hebrew classes to talk to us. And one day he came in and he had a topic he wanted to discuss, and that was the word Jew, okay? Because he felt that it had gotten over the years, over centuries, kind of a negative connotation, and he wanted to discuss it. So there were about 6 of us in the class, and Rabbi Shankman looked at the class and he said, how many of you young men here in this class would someday like to go to Hebrew college? And everybody raised their hand, very enthusiastically. And then, to make a point, he looked and he said, how many of you would be willing to go to Jew college? And everybody sort of looked down at their feet, and nobody raised their hand except for me. And Rabbi Shankman came over to me and he said, Mr. Wolfsie, you would go to Jew college? And I said, yes, Rabbi, I would. And he said, and why would you do that? I said, well, Rabbi, it sounds like it might be a little cheaper. And he looked at me, and I remember sweating. He looked at me and he said, you see me in my office after class. I was never so frightened in my whole life. And I walked into his office. He said, close the door. And I walked in. He walked up to me. He threw his arms around me. He said, that's the funniest thing I ever heard in my life. And that really sort of changed my perspective on what Jewish humor was. Here was somebody, and we'll talk more about this in the next few minutes, who was embracing the stereotype. Obviously, we'll talk what stereotypes are, but he was embracing the stereotype which existed for a long time, that Jews were cheap. Now, I want to say one thing about my Judaism, and that's very important that you know I'm Jewish. I once gave this presentation. People did not know I was Jewish, and because Jewish jokes are self-deprecating, the woman came up to me and thought that I had been anti-Semitic. She didn't really understand the premise, so I've obviously gotten that out of the way. But I was curious for a long time about my real background, and now with DNA you can do that. So let's put up. So is he really Jewish or does he just look funny, which is kind of a takeoff on the thing. So my wife, as a gift, gave me, what was it called again? Ancestry.com or whatever. Because I was convinced that I had sort of more of a varied background. I knew where my grandfather was from and his grandfather, but I had less knowledge about my mother's side of the family. So I assumed I was a Renaissance man, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And what I'm going to show you is true. We did the DNA thing, and this is what came back. That's absolutely what is said. So there was no question anymore about this. There is a connotation about what it means to be a Jew. This is not the actual book because it was too valuable for me to bring, but I have a book that's called Jew Jokes, okay? And you would suspect from the title that it's anti-Semitic. It is anti-Semitic. Every joke in here is anti-Semitic. But the interesting thing about this book is that many of the jokes in this book that are anti-Semitic are told in this book of Jewish humor, and they are not anti-Semitic because they're told by Jews with some variation, okay? But nevertheless, most Jewish jokes are, obviously most Jewish jokes are not anti-Semitic, but they are self-critical. By the way, I just tell you, I have 20 volumes of this, and here's my book on Unitarian jokes, just telling you. Not only is it a lot thinner, but by the way, I should also tell you we're Unitarians. I think some of you knew that. We're the Unitarian Church in Indianapolis. It says lots of jokes specially repurposed for you-know-who. So as a joke expert, every one of these jokes I've heard, but they've made it into Unitarians. Well, that's not a criticism. It's just a question of culture and thousands of years of culture. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about stereotypes. Oh, they're popping up there. All humor, especially Jewish humor, is based on stereotypes. The thing about stereotypes that you need to understand is that they are based in some way on truth. And I've just put a couple of them up there because there's some historical. For example, there are no Jewish jokes. When I say no, I've never read a Jewish joke, and I've read tens of thousands, about Jews being drunk or abusing alcohol. That's not in the culture. That's not the history of Judaism. Alcohol has never been a problem. So it's hard for other people or Jews themselves to make fun of people who drink because that's just not. So the stereotype has to have some truth to it. Okay. Let's see, the next one. Jews fixing things. Jackie Mason, rest his soul, he just passed away. He has an hysterical monologue about a Jew getting in having car trouble and getting out of the car. His wife says, well, look under the hood. He says, I don't know where the hood is. I mean, he knows nothing, okay? And that comes from a long historical thing that Jews were people of the book. They were not people that necessarily did anything. They did farming, of course, but they were not necessarily mechanical. This third one on the far right is a very important concept. God is obviously all-powerful in the Jewish religion, but if the Old Testament really, interestingly, really makes God and man very equal, you see God arguing, debating, disagreeing with people. Like Moses, they have a discussion, a debate. With Job, he has a discussion and a debate. With Abraham, he has a discussion and debate. And he compromises sometimes. So the idea there are very few jokes, folks, where God comes across as all-powerful. In fact, when I share with you 5 classic Jewish jokes, you will see that in most cases, God is not all-powerful, but he's on an equal level with man. Mother-in-law jokes, mother-in-law jokes, we'll talk about that a little bit later. There are no jokes about Jews being stupid. I have read tens of thousands of jokes. There are none about being stupid. Being canny, maybe being a little cagey and dishonest, yes, but never a joke about Jews being stupid. They always get the upper hand. I'll tell you one quick one. There's a Jew selling herring in the streets in Russia, and the soldier comes along and he says, you know, I've always wondered, what makes you Jews so smart? And the Jew selling herring says, well, he says, it's the herring. And the Russian soldier says, the herring? He says, yeah. He says, well, you know, I'm going to take a pound of that herring. How much is it? And the Jew says, well, it's 10 rubles. It'll make you smarter. About a week later, the Russian soldier comes back. He says, you know, I was just 3 miles from here in a small town, and I can buy those same pieces of herring for 3 rubles. And the Jew says, see, you're getting smarter already. So there are so many jokes where the Jew is smart, but there are no jokes where he's not. This is an interesting one. I don't know why I picked that clip art, but athletics. There's an old joke, guy comes into the store, he says, I'd like a short book from my friend, and they give him the Jewish sports heroes. Of course there are Jewish people. Sandy Koufax, one of the great Jewish ball players of all time. But it's a general rule. Sports and Jews, they were once 187th in the Olympics. They are not big sport. And this has a cultural history to it. You go back to 2nd century with the Greeks when they were Hellenizing the Jews, and they had the Olympics, and the Jews did not want to take part in the Olympics because they thought it made them more Greek. Okay, there are also no jokes about Jewish bachelors, okay? Because the truth is that historically speaking, in the Bible, in the Talmud, it was important to be married. It was important to be part of a family. So the idea of a gay bachelor, using gay in the old term of gay, it just didn't exist. It didn't exist anymore. Okay, so, by the way, I forgot. I want to introduce you to my family. It's a great shot. That's my great-grandfather, born in Latvia. That's my grandfather, also born in Latvia. That's my dad, and of course that's me. My great-grandfather was Hasidic. My grandfather was Orthodox. My father was conservative, and I was raised Reform. And there's my son, he's a Unitarian. His name is Christian. No, I'm just kidding. That's not Brett, could you go back to that picture real quick? Back to the, quick question. A couple of observations. 2 of these people spoke fluent Hebrew. 2 of them didn't speak a word of English. Can you guess which 2 it is? Yes, I was one of them. Okay. Hey, look at this next picture. Let's go ahead, Brett. When you look at the history of comedy and humor, much of it came from Eastern Europe at the turn of the last century. All of these comedians, and you probably don't know Hackett, I don't want to go over their names. You might not know Sophie Tucker in the corner. Every one of these Jews, every single one of them, either came themselves or their family did from Eastern Europe and came over here in the Great Migration. All of them. But here's the fascinating thing about this. There are lots of different ways to be Jewish, okay? I stopped going to Hebrew school when I was 14, but I never lost my passion for Jews and their history. I know many Jewish people. In fact, I know a rabbi who is an atheist, but he has a congregation. He celebrates all the holidays. He revels in the tradition of Judaism. So there's lots of ways to be Jewish. Some people are Jewish with the food, okay? I was Jewish with the humor. All of these Jews, and I don't think there's an exception. Let's keep that one up because that's a great example. All of these were Jews. They didn't deny being Jewish. They embraced their Judaism, but they were secular Jews. They were secular Jews, but they still reveled. Jack Benny, nobody could have spent more time and money supporting Jewish causes during World War II than Jack Benny. But he wasn't a religious Jew, okay? So there are lots of different ways to be Jewish. Okay, now we're going to have some fun. I'm now going to tell you 4 or 5 classic Jewish jokes. What makes them classic is that there are certain parameters that must exist for a joke to be truly Jewish. As I always say, you can't stick a hole in a jelly donut and make it a bagel, okay? There are certain classic things that have to be true to make a joke Jewish. And by the way, just a quick reference back to the comedians. If you think about it, the whole history of verbal humor is about nitpicking, it's about alternative meanings, it's about variation. All of that, in Judaism, in Hebrew, it's called pilpul, which means you dissect things, you look at the tiniest things, and then you have fun with it. Okay, let's do the desert joke. Classic Jewish joke. Told by an author of a recent book about Jewish humor, and she told this joke at a faculty meeting. Not at a faculty meeting, she told it to her secretary, and her secretary, not knowing she was Jewish, thought it was anti-Semitic. So here's the joke. 4 men are in the desert, and they are just parched. And the German says, I am so thirsty, I must have beer. And the Italian says, I am so thirsty, I must have wine. And the Frenchman says, I am so thirsty, I must have champagne. And the Jew says, I'm so thirsty, I must have diabetes. Here is the first thing I want you to understand about the nature of humor, of Jewish humor. That is a true Jewish joke for one major reason. You cannot switch that and have the Italian say, I must have diabetes. Do you all agree with me? That's not funny. That's not part of the culture of Jews being warriors and being hypochondriacs. So if I said to you, and the Italian says, I must have wine, I must have diabetes, you go, what the hell is he talking about? What does that joke mean? But that's a classic example of that. Here's another great one that I love. Not as funny. By the way, there's sort of an irony in this, as I'll talk later. Jewish humor does not always get a laughing response. As I said in my opening words, Jewish jokes are about wisdom. They're more about teaching than making you laugh. And that's which is kind of scary, because if you were just smiling at my joke, I wouldn't know it because you all got masks on, okay? So this is another one where it's not a laugher. I shouldn't preface it by saying that. But it is one that allows multiple interpretations. Most jokes that you hear, you're at a friend's party and a guy says, I got to tell you a joke, and he tells you the joke, and either you get it or you don't get it, but there's no multiple interpretations. But this is a classic joke of multiple interpretations. Traditionally, the rabbi would meet with a couple who were having marital problems. So in this story, the rabbi and his wife would often sit beside him. The couple comes in and the man tells his side of the story. They're having problems. And the rabbi says, he says, sounds like you might be right. And the woman is just very mystified by this. She says, wait, I want to tell you my side of the story. And she said, she explains to the rabbi why she feels that she is right. And the rabbi goes, well, it sounds like you're right. And the wife is just appalled, and she says to him later, sweetheart, you said he was right, then you said she was right. They can't be both right. And the rabbi goes, yeah, and you're right too. Well, how does one interpret that joke? Is the rabbi incompetent? Is he following the historical view of Jews where everybody has a point of view, which I'll also talk about later? I mean, there's lots of ways of interpreting that joke. Maybe he's just incompetent. Maybe he doesn't want to lose his job. Maybe he doesn't want those people to hate him. Multiple interpretations. A classic example of that is this joke. This is the classic Jewish joke. And I'm going to talk a little more about this than the others because it has so many facets to it. If you've heard the joke, no problem, because I think my explanation is, I hope, going to be interesting. So the grandmother takes her little grandchild to the ocean. And while they're there, a giant wave comes and takes the little boy out to sea. And the Jewish grandmother is just distraught. And she looks up to God and she says, oh God, she said, please bring my little boy back to me. She said, I love him so much. And if you bring him back to me just the way he was, I will be a better Jew than I've ever been. I will go to temple every Friday and Saturday. I will give to B'nai B'rith. Just bring him back to me the way he was. And with that, a giant wave comes and deposits the little boy right at her feet. And she looks at the little boy, and she looks up to God, and she says, he had a hat. Now, I want you to think about this for a moment. I have heard people tell this joke, and I've heard Jews tell this joke, even professional comedians tell the joke, and they miss the point of the joke. Because if I tell this to a largely Gentile group, and they laugh, and I say, why are you laughing at that joke? Here's what they often say. Well, Jewish women are never satisfied. That is not the point of the joke. It is not the point of the joke. The point of the joke is that she had an agreement with God, did she not? And what was the agreement? What was the covenant? What was the covenant? Bring him back the way he was. They had an agreement. Historically, covenants obviously are very important in Judaism. So now, I want to see how close a joke from here is different from a joke from here. In this book, well, actually it's not in this book, but I've heard the joke told where it's not God she's talking to, but she's talking to the lifeguard. Do you see the difference in that? If she says that to a lifeguard, she is a bitch. Right? She's ungrateful. Isn't that interesting how that changes when she's talking to God as opposed to when she's talking to a lifeguard? It changes the entire joke. It's an example of multiple interpretation, okay? I love that joke. It is the classic Jewish joke. Okay, here's not a laugher. This is just a great joke about, and I'm so lucky to have found this print back 100 years, because the joke is apparently 100 years old. Many of the jokes have come from Eastern Europe, okay? So the man goes to the tailor. It's right before the Jewish holidays. And he says, a couple of months before, he says, I want these pants. I could do a Jewish accent, but he said, I want these pants fixed. And the Jewish tailor says, well, okay. He says, come back in a couple of weeks. Man comes back in a couple of weeks. He said, have you got my pants? No, not yet. Come back in another couple of days. Comes back a couple of days later. Are the pants ready? No, I still need a little bit more time. Come back in another week. He comes back. This goes on and on and on. Now it's 3 days before Rosh Hashanah. And the man comes in. He says, you've got to have my pants now. And the tailor says, yes, the pants are ready. And the other Jew says, let me understand this. God made the earth, made the world in 7 days, and it's taken you 7 weeks to alter these pants. And the Jewish tailor says, yeah. He says, but look at the world and look at these pants. That's the joke that often with a Jewish crowd, don't misunderstand, I'm thrilled you laughed, but with a Jewish crowd it gets applause because there's wisdom in that joke. It's a commentary. What's it a commentary on? It has multiple interpretations. Is he criticizing God? Is he just bragging about his own workmanship? There's lots of different ways to look at that joke. Again, Jewish jokes have multiple interpretations. Okay, this is actually my favorite. And it has it, I think I said that 4 times. But this, well, I don't want to ruin it. I think I'll tell you the joke first. 4 rabbis, I couldn't find 4 in a picture, so I have 3. But 3 of the rabbis have a very strong opinion about something. Very strong opinion. And the 4th rabbi disagrees. And he looks up to God and he says to God, God, if I'm correct, show me a sign. Moshe says this. And all of a sudden, a beautiful day turns gray, just like today. And the 3 other rabbis turn to Moshe and they go, that proves nothing. It's just weather. And Moshe looks up to God. He says, God, if I am correct about this, I need a much more definitive sign. And with that, clouds, storm, lightning, rain. Other 3 rabbis go, that's silly. The weather changes all the time around here. Moshe looks up to God and he says to God, I need to prove to these rabbis that I am correct. I need the most definitive sign you can give me. And with that, the heavens open up. Out of the clouds comes this giant force of God. And God says, Moshe, you are correct. And one of the 3 rabbis turns and says, okay, now it's 3-2. When I first gave this speech, I met with a good friend of mine, Rabbi Dennis, at the Reconstruction Church in Indianapolis. And he asked me about some of the jokes I was telling. And I did not know this at the time, and he really educated me. I told him that joke, and Rabbi Dennis said to me, so mostly we think of jokes as things that came post-19th, from the old country, Eastern Europe. They were brought here, they were developed here. Obviously, other jokes have been written over time. But this joke, obviously, what did it mean? He said, well, Dick, in the Talmud, there is a passage where rabbis are having an argument, and one rabbi says, let's ask God. And the other rabbis say, no, the answer to our problems, the answer to our questions is not up there. The answer is in the book, meaning the Bible. That is what we are here for. That's the entire tradition of Judaism. The Talmud, the Mishnah, the Gemara, everything is looking at the Bible. And they have arguments. And a lot of times that's settled by majority rules. But the answer is not up there. So from that Talmud came this wonderful, wonderful joke. Okay, Brett. This is the last one, then we're going to end with some fun other jokes. Tradition is very important. Two rabbis are having an argument about whether you should sit or stand for the Shema. You know, obviously most of us know what the Shema is. It's the Jewish prayer. It's said either once or twice, sometimes 3 times a day. Do you stand or sit? They have this tremendous argument. They said, you know, Rabbi Stein lives about 2 miles from here. He was our rabbi for 50 years, and he's retired, but I'll bet you he'll know what the tradition is, because these 2 new rabbis did not know what the tradition is. So they knock on Rabbi Stein's door, and he comes to the door, and he says, can I help you? And the first rabbi says, Rabbi Stein, we have a question for you. What is the tradition? Is it, the first rabbi makes a case. He says, isn't the tradition that you always stand for the Shema? And the rabbi goes, no, that is not the tradition. And the other rabbi says, so the tradition is to sit for the Shema. And the rabbi goes, no, that's not the tradition. Well, the 2 rabbis are just mortified, and they say to Rabbi Stein, you must tell us the tradition. If we don't go back to our congregation and tell them what the answer to this question is, they'll be fighting, they'll be backbiting, they'll be screaming at each other, they will end friendships. And the rabbi goes, that's the tradition. The reason I call these Jewishy jokes is that every joke that I'm going to put up here was told to me, or I read it, with Jews in it. Now, remember I told you just can't put a Jew in a joke and make it Jewish. But these jokes are truly, truly funnier because it's about Jews. And what I've done the rabbi comes up to one of his congregants and he says, Mort, he said, you've been a member of this church for a long time. You've never given any money. And we're very concerned about that. And Mort says, let me tell you something. Did you know that I have a sister who's an alcoholic and has no job? And actually, it's the rabbi. The rabbi says, no, I didn't know that. And Mort says, do you know I have a brother? I have a brother who's been out of work for 6 or 8 years, and he has a medical condition and has no money. And the rabbi says, no, I didn't. He says, do you know I have a sister-in-law, okay, who has heart disease, and she's going to lose her home. And the rabbi says, sorry, Mort, I didn't know that. And Mort says, well, let me tell you something. I give nothing to them. Why would I give anything to you? God says, Herb, take a card. Herb says, nobody takes a card. God says, Herb, trust me. Take a card. He takes a card. He gets an ace. He has 18. God says, Herb, take another card. Gets another card, an ace, 19. Herb says, don't tell me to take another card. No one in the history of Las Vegas has taken a card with 19. God says, Herb, take another card. He gets 20, another ace. And Herb says, I'm going to God says, no. You trust me. You need to take another card. And the blackjack dealer gives him another card, and he turns it over, and it's another ace. And God says, you've got to be kidding me. Thank you all. I love doing this. When I get home, all I do is tell my wife how many things I forgot to tell you and talk about. But it's a very rich history, and I look forward to doing this. And I want to say, I think I can talk for Mary Ellen, we're very impressed with what we have seen here today. We love our church, but we have some work to do. And I think we've learned a lot, haven't we? What's that? Oh, she's taking notes. Yeah, I know. She takes notes. She takes notes on everything, and I won't tell the story from last night. Okay, thank you, folks, very much, very much.
Hear my people, hear me well. I have no need for sacrifice, but mercy, loving kindness shall alone for life and good suffice. And source of peace, lead us to peace, a place profound and wholly true, and lead us to a mastery, or drives in us that war pursue. May deeds we do inscribe our names as blessings in the book of life. O source of peace, lead us to heal. O source of peace, lead us from strife.
Closing words. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. Sarah Moores Campbell.
May the blessed